Welcome to the Niche Pursuits podcast. Today, we're joined by Ben Dankiw with Nav43. He runs an agency that does PPC and SEO for clients. Ben has a really kind of long journey that touches on almost every area of digital marketing. So no matter what part of digital marketing you're either interested in or involved in, he's probably done some version of it at some point. He started off by working at a PPC agency and cutting his teeth there. We talk about the different things that he learned while working at an agency that maybe you can't get on your own. He went off and started freelancing, did that for a couple years, transitioned that into an agency of his own, got to Nav43 eventually. We talk about the different iterations of freelancing into the agency world, running your own agency versus just freelancing on your own versus working for an agency. And we go through all the different complexities and the different things that I guess would highlight each of those. At his agency, he's also gone through a lot of transition. We talk a lot about the need for building systems and the value you can get when you do have those systems in place, the things that you're able to do and the opportunities you're able to take advantage of. One of those opportunities that we highlight in the second half of the interview is that Ben and his team are now actually building out content sites. And it's a fairly new venture for him, but we dive into the details of how he's building out these content sites with an agency team behind it. We get to hear about how he's road mapping these sites from the very beginning, planning out every keyword, every internal link, and how he roadmaps all that out, all the tools he's using to do that and prepare it, and then the different ways that they deploy that and get these websites built. So it's a really all-inclusive interview. I'll say that. Ben has almost been in every single space that we touch on here on the podcast, and really most of the spaces inside of the digital marketing community. I think you're going to enjoy a lot of what Ben has to share, and there's certainly a lot of valuable tips on how to grow and scale different projects that you're working on. Enjoy. Have you been frustrated with your Google traffic lately? Are you tired of tools that make you search through millions of keywords and require a math degree to figure out? There's an SEO tool called Rank IQ that can help. They're ranked #1 on G2 for both ease of use and customer satisfaction. Rank IQ gives you a list of the lowest competition, high traffic keywords in your niche, and they are all clear winners. When you choose one of their hand-picked keywords, their AI takes over and gives you a simple report telling you what Google wants you to cover in your blog post. Whether you have a new site or have been around for a while, Rank IQ will take your Google traffic to a whole new level. Go to rankiq.com/niche pursuits to lock yourself in at 50% off their monthly rate. I'll put this special link in the episode's description. Hey, Jared here. Today's episode is sponsored by onelittleweb.com, a bespoke link building service provider trusted by hundreds of niche site business owners just like you. One Little Web manually handpicks real and relevant sites for guest post backlinks that receive at least 5,000 monthly organic visitors from Google. The best part is that you can check the quality of the sites and approve or ask for replacements until you get the desired domains for your guest posts. So we've arranged an exclusive welcome offer for Niche Pursuits listeners, where you'll get a free DA40 backlink on your first order of a DA50 backlink. So again, you'll love One Little Web because A, they guarantee guest post backlinks with 5,000 plus monthly organic traffic sites. B, they let you review the sites beforehand and approve them. C, they write a 1,000 word, well-researched content post for every single guest post. So go to onelittleweb.com/niche pursuits to claim your free DA40 backlink today. Again, that's onelittleweb.com/niche pursuits. Welcome back to the Niche Pursuits podcast. My name is Jared Bauman. Today we're joined by Ben Dankiw with Nav43. Welcome, Ben.
Pleasure to be here.
Good to have you. Good to have you. I'm very excited for today's conversation. We are going to thread, obviously, the concept of website building in. That's what a lot of this podcast is, but perhaps not from a typical perspective that we start with. So many times our interviews come at it from people kind of starting a website or two on the side. Yours is a very different story. So without bearing the lead, bring us up to speed. Give us a little bit of an intro and a little bit of background on you, and then we'll dive into where you're at and what you're doing and what's working in your journey along the way.
Absolutely. So I have been a longtime listener of Niche Pursuits, first of all. So for everyone listening, I was right here in the first few episodes listening to Spencer and have been following along with Jared in the journey too. So I definitely know what it feels like to be a user tuning in for the first time maybe or whatnot. But myself, I built an agency. Over the last 6 years, we've scaled that agency up. I started out kind of in the paid search side of things, which is kind of funny, which the transition from paid search to SEO is not one that happens a whole lot, but
no, it's not.
They're very different worlds, I find. But I started out in paid search, early days, agency life. I was a math major, double major with business, and kind of didn't know where I was going and found the whole lead generation thing. I actually paid for a seminar myself to go find out what this whole Google AdWords thing was in 2010 or 2009. Some of the early days, anyone who knows the PPC world back then, it was much different.
The wild, wild west in comparison to now.
Oh
right?
yeah, exactly. The 2-cent clicks and all that good stuff.
Oh man, those are the good old days.
Yeah, exactly. So kind of climbed my way up the corporate ladder a little bit, and then decided to branch out, started what was an agency at the time, and I was the VP of marketing of my 2-person partnership.
Yep.
And started that way. And it was interesting. At the time, we found a niche. Like I was managing brands like Canadian Tire, and anyone in Canada would know that, but FedEx and a lot of these other brands. So I had a lot of big agency experience in the first year and a half of my career, but I found a niche in the restaurant marketing space. None of them were doing Google ads, right? None of them knew what a GMB was. None of them knew local lead generation. They didn't have marketing managers in place. So I actually started my journey as a restaurant marketing agency. Very early on, we focused on nightclubs, restaurants, and a little bit of real estate, but we got out of real estate real fast.
That's a tougher game, I imagine.
Yeah, it was just, you know what, when you're dealing one-to-one with real estate agents, it was a little bit tricky, and we weren't real estate agents or anything at the time. So the game was a little different. Than restaurants. We knew restaurants. We had like this basically local lead gen way to stand out. So it was easier for us to zone in on that. And we focused in on groups of restaurants. So instead of just like one single restaurant, it'd be a corporation that manages 10 to 15. So they would have the budget to like want to invest into corporate marketing, but not really an infrastructure of a team that have like one marketing manager. So started the first like freelance agency I had, or freelancing for about 15, 20 restaurants. And that kind of blossomed from there, but that's kind of where I got to start and said, you know what, I quit everything, like spur of the moment, cashed in my RSPs, which was like, I was 22 and a lot younger and a lot more risk. Well, I was okay with a lot more risk at the time, but left the corporate job and started this first restaurant marketing agency.
So when did you start I'll use the air quotes as well with you, but it's an agency, it's a freelance agency, but so when did you start your agency pursuing the restaurant side of things? What year was that?
That would have been the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013. I had 2 other partners in the space. And the 3 of us, one of them was another PPC manager, just like myself. And the third one was a director of marketing at restaurants. And he actually was like, guys, this is a completely untapped space, was the one who was like, we should do this. And the 3 of us, we got a few clients, and we were all like, hey, we're all going to quit. We're all going to do this together. And it just shows like, until things happen, the paths of life are so unknown. Like the 3 of us were all going to do this together. Mm-hmm. And one person got promoted and the other person felt like for them, the path of a safer job was the right path. And I'm still friends with partners with one of them still actually, and friends with the other quite closely. And they just chose to stay at their agency. So I quit and I went solo.
Is that one of those ones where you're like, okay, we're all jumping on 3, right? 1, 2, 3. And then Wait, guys, you're supposed to jump with me. Wait, oh shoot, I'm all on.
I'll admit, my current partner, he to this day, he's my business partner in Nav 43, which we'll get to. He'll still talk about the fact he's like, yeah, we kind of let you go, just go rogue there, and feel really bad that you quit your job, and we all decided not to. So it all worked out, honestly. Like,
It all
if I
worked
didn't
out.
take that risk, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Yeah, to some degree, sometimes that's really what it is. I mean, so you had a background a bit. It sounds like a couple years worth of working at a larger, I guess, is it an agency you were working at, and you were doing PPC not on
Yes.
your own, but at an agency? I mean, how vital or influential do you think that was for you to then lead off in your own? You know, did it have an impact? Did you get to cut your teeth? Did you get to learn about managing budgets in ways that maybe you would have had to learn on your own, and maybe more costly on your own agency?
Honestly, I think it was necessary, and I would, if I, in like hindsight, I probably should have stayed a little bit longer. I've always kind of been a little bit an entrepreneurial spirit myself, but at the same time, I was there for about almost 2 years, and I made the jump, and I had a lot of like good things going for me, and that's in that agency. Like, I was identified as a top performer in the department. They, here's your path to become a director, and et cetera. So I definitely had things going well in terms of progression, but I decided that this with Peel was a little bit more. But I can't. There's the first year. Manfred was one of my bosses and mentors, and he was just essential in like me learning client management, me learning organizational skills, like just validation on all that self-learning that you can find online. Like, everything you found online. There's you want to learn how to do a specific tactic, but to see it put together in a team, even my colleagues, us learning together and having 4 or 5 other people being like, I tried this, how'd that work? And when you're just starting out and testing, it's hard to get, you're basically accelerating your learning. So I felt like that year and a half helped me, like, and one time I spent $10,000 I wasn't supposed to spend somewhere. How do you figure that out? And one time, stuff like that, where you learn how real the marketing results you're doing are. And I was there for about a year and a half, but I probably, and like in hindsight, like I said, I probably think 2.5, 3 years gives you a really good baseline, because then you get that progression of being more charged with project development. Whereas when you're a junior, you're kind of really tactical. Like, this is your job. This is what you got to do. I definitely could have used a little bit more baking, but no, it helped me get where I was, for sure.
That's good. Yeah, I think you kind of echo what a lot of maybe people who live in the online world, right? Whether it's website building, SEO, freelancing, like, it can be pretty lonely, and it's difficult to bounce ideas off of people. We all kind of keep our projects a little bit private for obvious reasons, but it also means sometimes it's hard to learn and grow with colleagues when you have to work in silo as a freelancer or on your projects on the side. So I thought that might be something you might say or bring out.
No, absolutely. And it actually kind of led to, like, a lot of my entrepreneurial space time in the last 10 years has been with partners. Some good, some bad, some in between. But it's the solopreneur space is exactly that. I would definitely recommend people who are in their early days, especially as you're more experienced, you can kind of find what works for you, and you can bring in either strategic investors or partners to help grow what you're doing. But in the early days, when you don't have much money and you're kind of learning it with people, having a partner actually it helped me a lot. Like, we failed together. Like, that first business, I ended up selling it off to another agency. So you go through the struggles together with someone, it can bring out the best and the worst.
So 2012 or 13, you're doing a restaurant agency, for lack of a better terms.
Yeah.
Let's keep threading this journey out. I'm guessing that wasn't Nav 43 that we're talking about right now.
No, that was another agency called Creo, and the next few years I spent freelancing, subcontracting to other agencies. So I did get a lot more agency experience, and that helped build out my network. So from 2012 to about 2015, or 2013, I should say, actually, because that's when I really was away from my previous agency. 2013 to 2015, those 2.5 years or so, that's when I was still running my own clients. Like, I kept some of there's probably, 8 to 10 clients I was managing, but I was working for other agencies, working as their director, as their, strategic lead on this project, et cetera. So I got a little bit more experience across in like a subcontracting role.
When what was different, maybe from a high level, like what was different for you during that first foray into doing restaurants, agency, freelancing versus maybe what you're doing now? And I think the big reason I'm asking the question is to just maybe highlight a bit of the journey you've been on, the progression you've done, maybe some of the mistakes that you've made in those earlier years of freelancing and starting your own agency that you've kind of learned from.
Yeah. So in those early days, it was a lot of just get it done. There was not much planning and forward thinking and seeing where I'm going next. And, it was just that sale in front of me. And also it was, a lot of it was just you sell, you do the work, you manage the client. Like there wasn't large teams around you built up that way. So it was a lot more run and gun. Processes weren't in place. We built some templates, but like, essentially it was, Excel documents and, and whatnot. Right. So a lot of the things that help that like laid the foundation for a team to operate just weren't there. So like, to scale that kind of operation would just be, you come to that crossroad of like, okay, I'm at this point, like I can't really do more work myself. And you don't have processes in place. You don't have training built out. You don't have a brand image of where you're going to go, like a vision to where you're taking it. Like were we ever going to be like the restaurant agency of Canada or the US or whatnot, right? So we didn't have that kind of forward thinking. So back then it was a lot more just what's today, what's tomorrow,
Yeah. 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 It reminds me of the book, Michael Gerber, The E-Myth, right? And he talks about how, a lot of people end up with a business and they are the business owner, but really all they own is their own job and they work for the business. And the business is really just their job of employment that they have, rather than being the owner with processes and brand and all the other things you touched on in place that actually operate as a business.
That's exactly it. And at the time, I never really considered myself a business owner. I never thought of myself as a business owner. It was only until Nav 43 and even in the first year Nav 43, it wasn't quite that, but it was only until 2016, 17 that I started actually thinking, no, I own this and it goes where I'm taking it.
Right. Well, let's talk about Nav 43 because that is an interesting story that I want to get more into. Obviously, we chatted a little bit off air about the buildup here, but when did Nav 43 come about? How'd that transition happen?
So Nav 43 started in 2016. It was an interesting story because we actually circled back into the restaurant space.
Can't believe that.
Right? It was because I had such a network in that space, and that's part of something I would always recommend. And this is my second foray, but we had a list of people who wanted to work with us before we have at Nav 43 at least. Like we didn't walk in with no revenue. Like when I did the first jump, it was like, okay, here's some clients who are all interested, and we just let's do this, and we made the jump very quickly. With Nav 43, I built up about 40,000 in like potential in contract work of like a month, and being like, hey, like we can start with this, and we can scale that up a certain way. So I had three other partners, and one person was the finance person, and I brought in. He lent in a few $100,000 of working capital. And then there was a strategic partner and two execution partners. And myself, I was on the paid side, and the other partner was on the SEO side. So I had four people. We all came together and started this. Now, in addition to the 40,000 in revenue at the time that we had in the business, that was really just from the other SEO partner and myself. The two of us were running that, and the other two, strategic partner and the financial partner, they were the ones who were like, hey, let's make this a team, let's make this a business, and let's scale this. And it really changed the dynamic. Even though over the years, some partners are gone out of that group, it gave us working capital to actually dip into and hire senior level staff, which is something we could never really do before without taking a very major jump out of our smaller revenues, as well as infrastructure for an office. And at the time, now we're not really working much in an office, but at the time that was a big thing. The agency appeal, downtown Toronto, come in, have fun, have your workspaces all set up, open concept office. We had clients coming in and out. We were able to have a fun atmosphere, that kind of agency atmosphere. In addition to hiring some of the right people to help us grow together. So it turned in that 2-person, 3-person, like everyone kind of running gun to 5, 6 very quickly. And at 5, 6, we kind of entered into that that Wild West kind of like, okay, let's start growing. Let's do this together.
What do you think was the big driver of growth for the business? Were you guys doing a lot of outbound marketing? You have all this marketing experience. So did you put it to use for the business, or was it just more organic growth that happened faster because you had more momentum at that point?
No, we had, I'd say it all came down to the fact that we had quick results with some pretty high profile clients. We were able to show with our background of who we'd worked with before and the results we got in the restaurants, and you could see ranking first in Toronto for this, ranking first in Canada for this, and that word of mouth kind of marketing was really the basis of that early growth. We didn't actually do much marketing. It was all networking and word of mouth. Those two things together, because I brought on these partners and they each had their respective networks, that gave us a base, a kind of background of leads that we could lean on to at least feed some early growth. And then we had some really high profile marketing clients, things where we'd be I remember one night we were at a bar and someone who's well known in the marketing space, challenged us that we couldn't double his site traffic in a month, and he sent us 20 grand, and we did it. So it's definitely, that was on my business partner mostly for that one feat, but things like that where, okay, here's a goal, let's do it, and then let's talk about it. So we really didn't do much marketing, but we did at least have our case studies and spread that when we had our sales materials and whatnot. So it was mostly word of mouth and referral.
So you're telling me there's a lot of $20,000 clients hanging out at bars these days.
That was a wild one. I wish those happened more often, but
man, I've been hanging out all the wrong spots.
Yeah. Totally.
Okay, that's good. I mean, that's the best kind of growth, right? The kind where it's word of mouth. It's because sometimes hard to create, but clearly if you're getting rapid results. How did you guys go about? You talked about how you have a paid side of your agency and a SEO side of your agency. How's that dynamic been? Do you find most clients hire both? Do you package both together? Do most clients come in and go with one or the other? How does that workload balance with clients?
You know what? They operate so differently. I can tell you the hundreds of people who've come across our doorsteps over the last few years, very few of them say we need both. We have worked with some very early stage companies in the beginning when they raise funds and they're doing their seed raising or whatever, and they come to, we need to do a go-to-market plan. Here's our overall plan, and usually when we're doing a planning thing, we can integrate both SEO and PPC. But typically, for us at least, a lot of the times they come in for one service and then they realize they like working with us, and we can upsell and work on the other service together. Because a lot of our work comes from word of mouth and referrals, it's Nav43 did a great job on our SEO. Okay, I'm gonna go reach out to them from SEO. Oh, you also do PPC? Well, let's hire you for SEO first.
Yep.
And then if we like working with you, then we'll hire you for PPC. That's and vice versa on the PPC side. We actually keep the departments pretty separate, not separate in terms of not collaborating, but we have an SEM or PPC department, we have an SEO department, and our account managers and project managers bring them together. But at the same time, they just operate very differently. SEO operates more of almost like a dev sprint, where we have bigger milestones. We're working week to week, and that's how we every Monday we meet together and we break down our week, and we have that fits into our month's goal, which fits into our quarter's goal. But PPC, you have so many campaign changes, tweaks, and whatnot that are much more immediate that happen. So a client comes with a new marketing strategy or a new marketing plan, and it operates a lot differently. So we still operate in sprints as well, but they're usually on separate separate workflows.
That's interesting. It's very interesting. Okay. Well, let's, so how's the growth been? Obviously we're, that's still 6 years ago. I mean, where's the company at now, looking back 6 years from now?
Yeah. So early on, we made some, I would say, mistakes in spreading our focus too far. We were an agency, but then we wanted to build a tech product, and the agency didn't have a strong enough foundation. So we raised some money, and we built a WordPress plugin, which I still think is a great idea. It's one of those things where it's you see a business fail, and you're like, this had the potential to be great. But we burned through too much money. We didn't have the right leadership because no one was really running the project and owning the project from the kind of ground up there. So we were like putting, like, a dev was leading it at one point, a marketing person was leading another point, and it was just all in all. I walked away from that product years ago. That was back in like 2018, I think. So we had our focus split across so many things, and we were trying at the time. When we built Nav 43, we built another company called Navigate Technologies, and that's where we had dev companies. We had a marketing agency and a development agency, and we were trying to kind of pair the two together across. And there was also another agency that I didn't have any ownership with, that was a design agency. And the three of them were kind of always meant to bridge this gap of digital, technology, and creative. But things just keep, things evolve, things change. We realized that they're very different spaces. Like you're not raising to build a augmented reality carpet app when you're in the marketing world. Like we were going to the wrong places for money. We were letting a dev team kind of run shop, and without getting users on board with the plugin and lots of different things. So in those first couple of years, from like 2016. So 2016 to 2017, we spent a year really focusing on the agency and had some good growth. We grew it to, I think we did about 700,000 that first year, which was great for the first year of a company, and gave us some good hope that we could keep scaling it. But then the next year, we still grew, but there wasn't much profit, and we were constantly putting out fires because we were trying to run this tech company, and we were trying to consult across this design company, and there was a lot of that. So the first couple of years, we hit a lot of roadblocks and realized that, with our focus spread too thin, we had to be the best search agency. And to be the best search agency, you have to focus on continuously evolving and getting better at it, right? So nowadays, where I again have some more different splits, we made sure the foundation in the agency was there first.
I don't want to overstep the analogy, but all I keep hearing is so many comparisons or similarities for maybe people who are starting a website and they get success with it and they go start 3 more websites.
Yep.
And then a year later, they have their focus that spread too thin, and its focus is split too many ways. And they're not really getting success on maybe any of the projects anymore, or their original success isn't growing anymore. And it's almost funding these other projects that aren't growing because their concentration and their efforts are just spread too thin. Yeah. There is a time and place to start a second and a third website if you have a successful first one, but it almost sounds like a very mirrored journey to what you took Nav 43 on.
No, absolutely. And here's the thing is, you'll hear a success story of someone who did 10 websites. And their process.
You will.
You'll hear about that, and you'll hear many of those, like in terms of like maybe they do 20 sites, 30 sites, and they have a process in place to do that. That doesn't necessarily mean it's right for your situation. Like even recently, and I'm sure we'll get to this soon. Like with us launching some more of these brands, I originally had a plan to go to 10 websites. Well, I recently in the last couple of months decided, you know what? Let's stop at 5. I'm just going to stop at 5, and I want to focus on the monetization side of it. I want to focus on getting better in the content. And like I said, we'll probably get to expand on this more, but I recently shifted from saying, you know what, maybe we're not there yet. That 10 website portfolio where your risk is a little more diversified is super appealing. And then we might get there. But right now I decided, you know what, let's stop at 5. Let's let's build these the best we can, and then expand on those 5 once we have these learnings and best practices. Like let's build the custom WordPress template from scratch right now with all of our SEO techniques built into it. And then when we build number 6, we have a good template.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. So learning curve in the first couple of years with Nav 43 is spreading yourself too thin, but it sounds like you guys buckled down and really kind of nailed the processes going forward.
Yeah, we ended up there was 4 partners in the beginning. We ended up buying out a partner, the 3 of us. And that was just us not being aligned in a lot of things. And it just shows that not to speak against the first year where, having a finance partner was a good thing for us. And then in year 3, when we need to grow, we're not hitting our profit margins and we want to be more agile, move around, and you have an investor who wants to take it to I want to make this much money and we need to do this, and they're not willing to work with you on where the agency needs to go, not where they want it to go.
Right.
So we kind of came together and bought out that partner. So that was a big shift because then, that took a lot more. Okay, now the money first is gone. At the end of the day, so the money person's gone. So a little more risk, and then we ended up being fine, except for that was in 2020 February, which
there we go.
When you take out a high interest 6-figure loan to to a buyout and a pandemic hits the next month, you can lose some sleep and get a couple of gray hairs. Yeah.
Well, I don't want to, I've said this many times the last couple of months, but obviously you figured it out because I can't tell you how many people we've been interviewing on the podcast where a story was born out of COVID hitting in 2020, right? And I mean, we're now 2+ years past that. And so we have maturation to some of these stories. They're starting to mature. And I think we have another one coming.
We absolutely do.
I think we're about to hear another one.
It was February 2020. That's February 28th was when the buyout was official.
My goodness.
We had office space together, that beautiful, $30,000 plus a month office that we were all sharing. We ended that lease in February, and we were lease shopping, me and the 2 other partners at the time, in March, and decided at the time I was actually living in Panama too. So I was doing all this living abroad. They were lease shopping while I was living in the jungle. But not to detract too much from the story. We were basically moving our agency. I had to completely tell our team that we had bought out the partner, and because we had a misalignment of vision, but that doesn't change where we think we can bring this. And in that month of March, our revenues cut in half. So that was tricky. So it was interesting because you think now that like you said, you get to see in hindsight from March to July or August, we were coming to a crossroads because I had a lot of travel clients. I had a lot of restaurant clients still.
Yeah. And PPC also probably wasn't getting in, just no matter what type of client you had, there probably wasn't a lot of budgets going to that as businesses were uncertain about where to deploy their capital.
That's exactly it. So for those first 4 months, and I was no, I would pause if I was you too. You know what I mean? You try to get, let's market digital marketing. It's important at a time. And you're no, I get it. We don't really know where it's going. So those first 4 months were really difficult, but it actually, I don't say blessing in disguise, but it made us lean out our operation in terms of we didn't get an office again. We went full remote. A lot of the things that we just didn't need, we weren't spending on. There was no meals and entertainment budget being spent that was on networking and going to conferences and events that were expensive at the time. So it cut down our spending and made us think about things a little bit more on a budget wise. And then in September, what's more important in a remote, where people are staying at home, and e-commerce and generation. So budgets came back, and last year was our best year yet, and we've been growing ever since. So it actually was a kickstart to something that was very scary. And don't be wrong, I know in the grand scheme of things, marketing budget isn't the number one thing, but those first 4 months when all your revenues are cut and you're trying to start a new, you've bought out a majority partner in an aggressive play, it was quite some time.
I run an agency as well, and I remember those first months were really scary just because there are too many variables, and you just didn't know how. You realize that your business is really in the hands of all the other businesses that are kind of interconnected in all of this. And you just don't know which way it's going to end up going. You might have a solid business plan with great referrals and good processes and all these things, but there's certain events that kind of come in and can overtake that. It's really.
And some things I had one employee who every single one of his clients paused, every single one. So And when it sounds like, okay, whatever is easy, because there were benefits, there were government benefits for keeping people employed. So when I didn't want to lay off, I tried everything I could to not have to lay off staff. I was like, good staff, I want to be here. I don't want to lay anyone off. I really don't. So we made projects, and we were doing, he built a watch site, and we were doing things like these niches on his own. And I think he still has a couple of these. But the funny part was we tried all this work until things keep him busy until August. Then September, when things are about to come back, he quit because he was like, I'm bored and I don't feel like my career is progressing enough. And I was like,
after all that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I wish him the best. He was a great guy. He just wanted, he has his own way to go. But there was just so many things like that. You just didn't know. You just
yeah. It's just, who knew that the business was turning around the next month? Who knew that was around the corner? Exactly. You've mentioned a couple times now, websites. So, catch us up on, apparently you've been listening to the podcast for a while, so certainly you're no secret to the concept of building, content sites, monetized sites, whatnot. But where did those enter into what you're doing?
Yeah. So we, a few years back when we started putting together our team, one of the things we always really pushed was an entrepreneurial spirit. And this is really from my business partner at the time, Tyler, who was a very big fan of testing SEO sites on your own. If you can't rank your own sites, how are you working on client sites? You kind of need that testing ability and be able to move fast and break stuff and lose rankings. And you obviously don't want to be doing that with a brand that you're working on, right? So you learn a lot more when it's something you have full control over. So from the beginning, from interns to juniors, and nowadays we actually aren't doing internship programs, junior programs anymore. We're hiring senior and training into our process. But when we were a younger company, to afford growing at an easier, we brought in interns and tried to train them because we had more time to do that ourselves, right? And what we would always say is you're starting a site and find your niche, find something you're interested in. And we had, one person do an electrician site, and he was making money off testers and boots, and they grew these sites, a few of them, to about $500 to $1,000 a month. But it, one, like I said, helped them really accelerate their testing. And two, they were just super interested in, I'd find my staff would be sitting there at 6:37 being when this time we were still in office, being let's talk about your watch site and your electrician site. And I always loved that excitement into the true SEO. So seeing that kind of blossom at a learning phase, over the last couple of years, I was like, you know what? This has legs. We can do it for fun on the side.
Right.
And these little sites are making $1,000 a month, who we're not putting real resources behind. So about a year and a half ago, I said, let's launch our first company site. And let's pick a niche. Let's launch it. That's at securitypics.com. It was just a test site. We spun up, we got some cheap content made, and we just spent some money on some creative. And over the last, and I think it cost us $5,000 with time and resources, and it built it up to 5,000 people a month, just just launching it and letting it sit. We did nothing for this site. That's people, not money. So that site never really generated a lot of money, just kind of sitting there right now. But at least it was this evolution over the last year and a half, where I've been hey, well, we can do that. Why can't we focus on the affiliate side? Let's get share sale going. Let's actually, on this next site, Getaway Well, which is a travel wellness site we're doing, let's focus more on the brand this time, because Security Pics was just hey, let's build a logo and do our own thing, right?
Throw it up.
Exactly. So I'm part of Rhodium, and do a lot of, and have my groups there, and I see the power in a lot of these content sites, and it's so fascinating to me, just truly focusing on content. So over the last year and a half, just taking this, throw up a test Security Pics site and going, okay, where can I take this? I want a niche I'm interested in. I want to put some time and resources into it. So the last year, we've been focusing on not only, learning about running a content site, but also building up a culture within the agency to think about niches. So everyone is kind of encouraged to have their own, and then there's the company ones as well.
How do you divvy out responsibilities when you have like clients and work to be done for clients and team members that have responsibilities for clients, and then you have these websites that are company based, and so obviously company time is spent on them. Like, how have you come up with processes and workflow around that? I'm kind of fascinated by the ability to balance a client load while also routinely and continuously building websites.
Yeah, so this all comes down to that building the processes and infrastructure in place of the agency. Like we use ClickUp as a project management tool. We use Practice Ignition, or now it's just called Ignition app, to work on like scope, aligning budgets to scope, which we can align into our project management tool. So we know the hours that our clients need, and we are able to manage that. And I know what each of my staff can handle in terms of like time. And they actually, like, the funny thing is they love working on the niche. So
Yeah,
it's not hard to be like, it's more like, hey, which one do you want to work on? Like they actually really appreciate it and volunteer that side. And like, we get to do things like, hey, this month we're actually testing out keyword clustering, or this month we're testing out brief, automation. I want to create 50 briefs and do it with automated, all these different tools. And like the kinds of things where you're like, no, we have a process with the clients. The interesting is we get to learn what the niche is, and then we just apply what works to the clients, right? So the clients, as long as they're getting the right attention from their scope of work and what we're being paid to do, and they're seeing results. Like, all of my staff knows that, like, okay, what are your goals? What are your priorities? Here's our project management system. Like, you can't just mess off to work on niches all week. And because we have sprints in place, we have training and documentation, and we have a whole team that keeps each other accountable. Like, a project manager works with my SEO specialist, with my PPC specialist. And if one person's not holding up their end of the bargain on the client delivery, it shows pretty quickly because we have the process in place. But at the same time, like, that just means if you do that all well, and definitely work smart, not hard. This is something I definitely stand behind. It gives you more time, and I think that time can be spent on. I never discourage just research and learning and testing and breaking, so they can do that on these niche sites.
I bet your clients like it too. Do you let them know? Do they find out? I mean, because it's always interesting if you are an agency and like, where do you test? You don't want to mess up on one of your clients' sites. And where do you learn, or where are you given the freedom to take, I don't want to call it risks, but try something a little bit different? Well, you have these sites that it does sound like you're willing to be a little bit more riskful with, I guess, is that a word? Risky. And then you can take what works and apply it to the clients. I can imagine it's a good thing for clients to hear about and understand as well.
You know what? I guess there's two parts to that. One, I often do tell my clients that we build and rank our own sites. There's something about that they go, you got some skin in the game in here, and like, wait, you're trying to build and monetize sites as well. Like, that's great. Like, we know, like, we're doing that together. So I hope you're doing it on your own. There's something comforting they get from knowing that. So I never shy away from telling them. But it's never come up on the, how did you learn that this doesn't work? It's just, it becomes this like, we've been doing this 6 years. Like, I've seen a lot of things work. I've seen a lot of things not. I've seen a lot of algorithms come out that we had to like scramble to figure out what's going on. And you have to, you have all these different sites in your portfolio, either niches or clients who, like it or not, like, it's not even being risky or not risky. You don't know what Google's going to do. So in the SEO game, there's nothing like completely safe, right? So it's never come up about like, how do you test that something breaks? It's usually, how do you know this works? And the unspoken thing behind it is, well, I broke it on the site that you don't know about.
Yeah, exactly. Well, they it's a long adage in marketing. Like, no one really wants to know how the sausage is made. So
that's it, right?
When it comes to SEO, probably some of those similar things apply there.
And that's it. Like, we do all like white hat. I know it's kind of cliche, white hat, gray hat, black hat, but we are doing all the right tactics for our clients in our niches. It's not like we're doing like PBNs and that kind of stuff. So we're not doing like the full black, but we're a little more like, let's spin it up, but we have to spin it up. Like, unless we're selling it. If we're trying to sell it, that's one thing. Like, building something to have value and long-term growth versus a test site. Like, so I would kind of differentiate between like like literal test sites where like, who cares about this? Like, we are just playing around, like ranking our names and ranking our like little sites here that are just like pure tests. Those we can just do whatever we want with. And then there's the niches where like I want Getaway Well to be a brand that grows into a community, and I'm not going to risk that for some quick like black links.
Talk about how you were able to kind of pull this off. Like what was the difference this time around? Earlier on in your story, you talked about spreading yourself too thin, and you just weren't able to get the right traction on the projects because you were spread too thin. Now you're at a totally different place. And I'm asking more for people who are listening that can kind of hear what separates moving on to new projects and then being successful versus taking on new projects and then spreading themselves too thin and not getting that success.
Don't rush it. Don't rush into the new thing. Like part of what's making this happen now is the fact that I have a team I can trust, who've been there for years, or at least a year, some of them, where a process is in place where we go like, what's your escalation plan? I still am the CEO of Nav 43. I still have responsibilities, but now I can spend more of my time on sales and biz dev and in agency like strategy and guidance, as opposed to like, this is happening, Ben, we need you in the room today. It doesn't happen quite so much. So having like the right people in place that can allow me to do that. So when whatever you're doing, if you have a freelance, going on, do you have processes in play? Do you have a VA that you're working with? Like there's lots of different variations, and it's been years since I've done that freelance play, and I kind of didn't do it successfully the first time. But this time around, I would say making sure the team is in place, trained, and not like assumed. I've hired a lot of people in the past who like showed me a lot of worth in their SEO and their smart SEO or smart PPC and whatnot. And I assume that they're going to do it the Nav 43 way. And then it's like, no, like we have built a process, and this is how we do it. And my project manager knows to say like, hey, I know you're the SEO person, but typically after migration, we're monitoring the site to make sure for the next 3 to 4 weeks, like we have checklists, we have processes. So now that when there's that built out, it gives you a little more flexibility to be like, I'm going to spend a day doing this. Before, I wouldn't be able to block off time properly to really focus on something. And you could say you can, but then when you're trying to block that time off and being pulled in a bunch of directions, it's difficult. So one is setting up that foundation. Two is, I guess, honestly, there's a little bit more patience and flexibility. Some weeks I'll launch a whole new niche. Other weeks it feels like nothing really gets done, and being like, you know what, that's okay. Like not every week has to be a rock star week, and like not trying to overextend myself and burn out on that week where like, this isn't happening. Like I wanted to go to the gym. I wanted to do this. And you know what, some team member got sick, and yeah, we could do all hands on deck to hit that launch day for this niche, or we can do it next week. And I'm not saying don't push off, like don't get it done, but like we can do it next week.
The benefits of solving some of the scale problems there. Talk back to people who might be in a freelance position and wondering how to keep, all the projects in the air, wondering about the transition to hiring out a team. There's always that debate, right? Like, is it better to stay freelancing and keep handling everything yourself versus building out a team? And even if it's just a couple people on the team, so that you can kind of focus on different tasks. What advice do you have for people trying to consider that, which way to go on that journey?
I guess my biggest piece of advice is really think introspectively on what you like to do. I can tell you, one, you're not the only person facing this. I know people who've been doing this 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, 2 years, all around the map. People who are incredibly talented, who just can't say no to enough work, and they don't have a problem getting people requesting them for work, but they are having problems with this moment of like, do I build a team? Do I outsource, or do I change what I'm doing? Because or do I stay the course? Because that would be another thing. Just, you know what, I can make this much money and I'm happy with that. Like sometimes people think like, it's like you can build up a practice to just on your own making like $300,000 a year, or 400, who knows? Like I'm just saying like random numbers, but like the step from 300 to 500 where you have to hire 4 people might not be for you. It's like, that's something that I would say is like, do you like managing people? Okay. So if you choose to build your own team, do you have a good eye for picking people who you can trust? Are you good at interviewing and identifying skill sets, training, delegating? All these different skill sets are important for someone managing people and building a team. And you go, no, I wouldn't be good at that. Okay, so then look at maybe outsourcing, and it has its own challenges. Like you definitely, when you're hiring outsourcers, you have a whole set of you have to still run the ship. You just have in a different process. Are you good at building processes? Are you good at having escalation things in place? Or do you like to kind of be on an island and think? You're not going to really collaborate as much when you're working in an outsourced situation. So you kind of need that self discipline and guidance, whereas being in a team, you kind of get people to build off of and grow from, right? So for all those freelancers out there, like, I wouldn't say there's one specific way, but think on what you like before you make that next step. And at the end of the day, like, I also know people who've said, you know what, I'm actually going to go back in-house because I feel like I want to hone the skill set of people management before I do it and blow up my own freelancing. So there's so many different routes. Like, I wouldn't be afraid of any which one, but I think the most important part would just be understanding where your skill sets lie, because managing people is a whole new thing. It's different. There's emotions, there's there's a lot of training and guidance and one-to-ones and all that good stuff that you can appreciate, or it can scare you. And that's not for you, or not scare you, but maybe it's just something, you don't want.
I realize you really bring the full circle here. You have worked at an agency as an employee. You have freelanced doing, PPC, SEO skills for clients. You've run you run your own agency at this point now with a whole team of people, and you also build websites inside of that agency. I mean, you really have tackled almost every side of the proverbial coin here.
I feel like I'm just getting started.
You are, it sounds like. That's a good transition. So with your websites, like, what are the goals here? What are you seeing working? I mean, I'd love to hear. We interview a lot of people who are working on a single website, or maybe a couple of websites, but you have a different angle. And I'd like to maybe spend the last part of the interview talking about it, because you're able to kind of deploy ideas quickly. You're able to rally teams around maybe a concept that you go after. So you might, have some different insights for people that we're not used to hearing. What's working? What are you seeing succeed right now in the websites you guys are working on?
Yeah. So right now, I'd say a couple of things stand out. So one, I am focusing on intersecting niches where one meets another. Like I mentioned, Getaway Well, it's like this travel meets a wellness mindset. Own mornings would be like, once again, like, personal productivity development versus, personal health in the mornings, and just understanding routines and whatnot. So finding things that kind of intersect and find my niches there. I really like trying to find that, like, where can we kind of stand out and find two groups of audiences together. But on like the actual tactical side, we're really following this whole hub and spoke methodology right now. We're really focusing on building out a very large upfront plan. And then because we have those processes in place, it's not on autopilot. People are still having to just think strategically during it, but you have a 400-page keyword map built out with all intertwining, interlinking, planned out for how you want that to happen with the spoke mentality into the hub. You have, a way to do keyword clustering and use all these really great tools to help that bringing together more keyword opportunity in one piece of content. So you build it all up into this upfront structure. So right now, in these early phases, some of these websites, we're spending more time upfront building out our, here's our pillar pieces, here's our, subcategories, and here's our 300 blog articles over a year. And then, we're still using writers and still focus. Right now, we're trying to really spend a lot of time working on our content structuring. But if you're a solopreneur, if you're just doing this on your own, it opens up the doors when you have this plan to give, hey, here's 20 briefs, and you can give that to a writer, and you can do it a little more, at scale as a small operation. So we're using our resources to go into the content strategy. But it kind of if you do all that planning up front right now is what we're experimenting on. And then you kind of have your marching orders. Like, we're going to do 25 blog posts a month. I want 3 main pillar posts, and we're just going to keep pushing this out. And then then you can focus on how you can monetize it after. Because right now we're really trying to get sites launched in that first 3 months, trying to get like 100 pieces up there, get it all live, get it baking. Then you got like that whole 6-month period where things are indexing, ranking, and whatnot. So
Or not
nowadays,
indexing.
or not indexing, and you're like, where is this happening? But nowadays, with how long Google takes to really understand content sometimes, and I'm seeing people have awesome techniques for escalating it, but as a rule of thumb, it takes
Correct.
some time, right? So make sure you have like a diverse thing of diverse places you can put your time while you're waiting on Google to do things. You're not sitting there, right? So that's where that process comes into play.
What type of tools are you using? If you don't mind sharing maybe a few favorites, like a lot of that planning and infrastructure would take, like I can imagine either a very gnarly Google Doc or Excel spreadsheet, or maybe some tools that you're harnessing to help out there.
Yeah, no, we're using ClickUp mixed with Google Docs, but we're also using Zapier to automate everything. So our writers can, you can update a status and it goes across a board. So we're doing that. I've seen a lot of people who just really focus in on the editorial calendar and really perfecting that template, Airtable or whatnot. There's lots of different ways to, of course, do it, but I've found since ClickUp really fits in with the Google Sheets that we've built out for our content creation process, and it fits into our agency model because it is a robust PM tool.
Right.
So we're kind of a little bit. That's one maybe an advantage to being just focused on the content side is you can just work within the content site and you can say like, does Airtable and this etc. process work for my content calendar? We're trying to bridge the gap with Zapier and ClickUp, and then SEO tools. Right now, to be honest, Ahrefs is still our staple. Like that's keyword seeding and just building out those keywords from Ahrefs. Really appreciate that. Working on like keyword clustering tools. I think it's one's contentdistribution.com and the other one is Keyword AI. I can't remember the exact year off the top of my head, but clustering tools that are focusing on using NLP and using tactics to bringing together keywords that can give us a little bit more value into our briefs, and then leveraging something like right now we're actually testing a lot of this like phrase, outranking, surfer SEO, POP. Those 4 tools are something we're playing around with testing, and people in my Rhodium group are testing their own as well.
Yeah, for content, for briefs and that sort of thing, for planning out the content. So basically, in a nutshell, you're kind of taking a website concept. You're taking niches that intersect each other, which I love because a lot of people will tackle a niche from like, let's do one on mountain biking, but maybe you're going to be, I don't know, mountain biking in national parks or something. I'm making something up, but you're kind of going after a subset of a broader niche to get more buying intent, to get more personalization, to get more strategic insights into that group of people. You're taking the whole roadmap ahead of time, planning out all the big topics, all the subtopics. You're chucking keywords that you research into clustering tools to try to really break it out. And then you're using tools to create briefs. And then you basically kind of have the roadmap all in front of you. And then you can harness your team to plug in those gaps throughout the year, throughout the month, throughout as time goes on.
Exactly. And we're getting better as we go. So like sometimes it happens in these blocks where we find a new problem. We're like, hey, we need to get good at this problem. And that's where we kind of went to like from what templates are we using for WordPress and what tools are we using for these keywords and how are we clustering and now content brief automation and creation. Next up, get better at the affiliate marketing selection, what offers we're putting in there, how we're implementing it. So it's a journey still.
I love that you're clearly carving out time. You've said it a bunch. You're carving out time for like focus efforts on specific areas instead of maybe going after what do they say? Like the screaming baby in the room, right? And actually working with purpose on different areas of your websites to improve the processes and improve how you guys are approaching things. That's something that I think a lot of people could learn from. So many times, again, just doing this without as much of a plan, you don't plan for the improvements and the optimizations that you want to make.
Yeah, there's something to be said about kind of doing it all together at once and seeing things work and not work and always continuously working on an overall, project. But I mean, SEO is a zero-sum game. Like you're trying to rank and like you're trying to, at the end of the day, like, do we have the best content automation process? Do we have the best this process? So when we come to that kind of, next step, we want to feel confident in that we've done the research, that I can say like, this might change. Like everything, maybe new tools come out and it's better than Surf for SEO or better than this or whatever, or, keyword clustering and how Google identifies LSI and all those keywords and whatnot it develops as new algorithms come out. So things are always going to come back to you. But if you set up that base, then you can feel confident in that moving into the next one. So, I mean, time blocking and properly diving into these, and some people, we can wormhole with the best of them, right? Just like I'm sure other people know, and you can just, you're like, no, I need to move on to the next thing. Don't get me wrong, I know that feeling too, but finding the right time though.
We should do a whole episode on efficiency. I hate to say hacks because they're not hacks, they're just best practices, but
that's it. Yeah.
Trying to actually organize a day and stick to it, right? I think we all suffer from a little shiny object syndrome.
Oh, and I've read not most of the books. I've read a lot of books that are talking about all that. And it's like, yes, but do I do all of them? No, I don't. I need to do better. Yeah, you can always do better.
Well, like you said, not every week has to be a home run.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can get by with doing a lot of them and still, really improving the amount of productivity you have. So anyways, okay. Final thoughts. Anything I didn't ask you about? We really touched on a lot of different things. Anything that you think is really important that we didn't dive into deep enough?
No, I think we had quite the conversation. I feel like we hit the journey from freelance all the way to the agency and marketing and all that good stuff. So
yeah, we covered like 12 years worth of your life there.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a journey.
No kidding. Well, congratulations on the success. I think some of these sites that you're building right now will be really interesting to hear where they develop and grow into. Yeah. And again, to me, one of the most fascinating things about having you on is the approach you're taking with building those sites. Obviously, you have quite the success with your agency, and then you're able to share so many of the things you learned along the way that'll be helpful for people to glean from. But so much of that plays into how you're building sites now. And I'm just curious to see what kind of growth you get with those, with that sort of focus and that sort of planning.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the sites that we actually are in the midst of launching right now, we took a different approach, and we're I wouldn't say acquiring, but we're partnering with a site and going 50-50 on it. And they already have a bunch of content. And they have content creators, so we're trying different things. But right now, I want to see each of these 5 sites, these first 5. I want to grow them all to at least that kind of like $10,000 a month range. And we're in the early phases of it, absolutely. But of course, grow further. But once we get to that kind of stage, we can really see where we can take these brands. Because at the end of the day, a couple of the brands, like I was Getaway Well and whatnot, where I actually can see myself traveling and growing this and building a community and whatnot too. Hopefully some of them turn into more than niches, and the other ones will just flip and sell. They aren't just like, maybe it's not the brand for me. It's still a good website. We can just sell it.
It's great. It's a great thing. Beauty about this space, right?
Yeah.
Let's see. Where can people follow along with you and your journey? Where can people keep up with you?
Best place would probably be on LinkedIn. That's where I share a lot of my own, what we're working on, projects, little updates and that. So you can find me, Ben Dankiw, right on LinkedIn, and or on the agency nav43.com. We got a blog there. So that one at nav43.com's blog is more tactical stuff, like what we talk about, certain things we're doing in terms of how we're leveraging these tools. So tactically is more on Nav43 side.
Okay, good. Ben, thanks so much for coming on board. This is a great conversation. The hour flew by.
That did fly by. Thanks for having me. This was great.
Yeah. All right. Until we talk next time. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks, Jared.
Have you been frustrated with your Google traffic lately? Are you tired of tools that make you search through millions of keywords and require a math degree to figure out? There's an SEO tool called Rank IQ that can help. They're ranked number 1 on G2 for both ease of use and customer satisfaction. Rank IQ gives you a list of the lowest competition, high traffic keywords in your niche, and they're all clear winners. When you choose one of their hand-picked keywords, their AI takes over and gives you a simple report telling you what Google wants you to cover in your blog post. Whether you have a new site or have been around for a while, Rank IQ will take your Google traffic to a whole new level. Go to rankiq.com/niche pursuits to lock yourself in at 50% off their monthly rate. I'll put this special link in the episode's description. Hey, Jared here. Today's episode is sponsored by onelittleweb.com, a bespoke link building service provider trusted by hundreds of niche site business owners just like you. One Little Web manually handpicks real and relevant sites for guest post backlinks that receive at least 5,000 monthly organic visitors from Google. The best part is that you can check the quality of the sites and approve or ask for replacements until you get the desired domains for your guest posts. So we've arranged an exclusive welcome offer for Niche Pursuits listeners, where you'll get a free DA40 backlink on your first order of a DA50 backlink. So again, you'll love One Little Web because A, they guarantee guest post backlinks with 5,000 plus monthly organic traffic sites. B, they let you review the sites beforehand and approve them. C, they write a 1,000 word, well-researched content post for every single guest post. So go to onelittleweb.com/niche pursuits to claim your free DA40 backlink today. Again, that's onelittleweb.com/niche pursuits.